Harry Potter returns to Hogwarts after a year that changed everything. He learned the truth about Sirius Black, faced the Dementors, and watched an innocent man escape into the night on the back of a hippogriff. Now another summer with the Dursleys is behind him, and the world beyond Privet Drive is growing darker in ways he can't yet see. Far from Hogwarts, old magic is stirring, and Lord Voldemort is closer to regaining his strength than anyone in the wizarding world wants to believe. This is the year of the Quidditch World Cup, the Triwizard Tournament, and a graveyard where a boy dies and a Dark Lord rises again. This is the recap of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Book 4 in the Harry Potter series. Let's begin. Section 1, the World Cup in the Dark Mark. In the village of Little Hangleton, the old Riddle House still stands, half abandoned and full of rumor. Frank Bryce, its elderly caretaker, once stood trial for the murder of the Riddles, but was cleared and has lived under suspicion ever since. One night, he sees a light in the supposedly empty house and goes to investigate. Inside, he overhears a conversation between a man called Wormtail and a cold, disembodied voice he calls My Lord. They speak of Harry Potter, a plan that will begin after the Quidditch World Cup, and the recent murder of Bertha Jorkins. When Frank is discovered, he demands the speaker show himself like a man, and a small, twisted figure raises a wand and kills him with a flash of green light. Far away, Harry wakes in the night with his scar burning like a brand. He remembers only flashes of his dream, Voldemort, Wormtail, a murder, an old man, and he is frightened because the pain in his scar usually means Voldemort is close. Unable to talk to the Dursleys about it, Harry writes to his godfather, Sirius Black. He tells him about the dream and the pain in his scar and asks if he should be worried. Life at Privet Drive is as joyless as ever. Dudley is on a diet, the whole family is miserable about it, and Harry's only comfort is the thought of Hogwarts. A letter arrives from Mrs. Weasley, asking permission for Harry to attend the Quidditch World Cup and stay with them afterward. Uncle Vernon is tempted to say no, just to keep Harry unhappy, but when Harry mentions his dangerous godfather, Vernon nervously agrees. On the day the Weasleys come to collect him, the Dursleys prepare their house as if facing an invasion. The Weasleys arrive via the blocked fireplace, blast a hole in the wall, and step through in a shower of soot and chaos. Fred accidentally drops Tongue toffees, and Dudley can't resist eating one. His tongue swells to an enormous, snake-like size, and as the Dursleys panic, Mr. Weasley hurriedly sends Harry through the fire to safety. At the Burrow, Harry is welcomed into the noisy warmth of the Weasley home. Mr. Weasley is furious that Fred and George tested their joke sweets on a muggle, and Mrs. Weasley is even angrier that they won't give up their dream of opening a joke shop. Harry meets Bill and Charlie properly, hears about Percy's new ministry job, and sees Hermione again. Over dinner, talk turns to the World Cup, lost witch Bertha Jorkins, and Percy's strict boss Barty Crouch. The next morning, they travel to the Cup using a portkey, an old boot on a hill. They share it with Amos Diggory and his son Cedric, and Amos can't resist boasting about Cedric beating Harry in Quidditch last year. The portkey whisks them to a vast campsite full of witches and wizards from around the world. Harry sees the magical community on a scale he never imagined, with foreign accents, different robes, and banners supporting national Quidditch teams. They meet a bewitched and overworked Muggle campsite manager whose memory keeps being wiped. Harry sees tents that are impossibly large inside, and mascots and merchandise for Ireland and Bulgaria, the two finalist teams. Ludo Bagman appears, cheerful and careless, taking bets on the match. Fred and George stake all their savings that Ireland will win, but Victor Crumb will catch the snitch. They glimpse Barty Crouch, precise and distant, and hear hints about a mysterious event coming to Hogwarts. As night falls, excitement builds, and they climb into the enormous stadium. In the top box, Harry meets Winky, Crouch's anxious house elf, who is saving a seat for her master. Fudge arrives, along with the Malfoys, who sneer at Hermione's Muggle-born status. Ireland's leprechaun mascots shower the crowd with gold, and Bulgaria's Vila dance with uncanny, dangerous beauty. Crumb, only 18, is brilliant on a broom, but Ireland dominates the scoring and wins despite him catching the snitch. Later, in the middle of the night, Mr. Weasley wakes Harry and tells the younger ones to flee to the woods. Masked figures, Death Eaters, are levitating and tormenting the Muggle family who runs the campsite, and the whole camp dissolves into panic. In the woods, Harry loses his wand. Separated from Fred, George, and Ginny, he, Ron, and Hermione stumble into Draco Malfoy, who hints that Hermione should be afraid because they are after Muggles and Muggleborns. Suddenly, a spell lights the sky with a giant green skull and a snake, the Dark Mark. Ministry wizards arrive, spells fly, and Harry, Ron, and Hermione are nearly blamed until Winky is discovered nearby clutching Harry's wand. It was Harry's wand that cast the Dark Mark, and Mr. Crouch furiously dismisses Winky, freeing her in rage and humiliation. Back in their tent, Mr. Weasley explains that the Dark Mark was Voldemort's sign and was cast above every place he murdered in the old days. Harry lies awake thinking grimly that 3 days ago his scar hurt, and now Voldemort's mark has lit up the sky again. Section 2. The Tournament and the Warning Signs. The Weasleys and Harry return to the Burrow, where Mrs. Weasley panics over the news. The Daily Prophet, written by reporter Rita Skeeter, exaggerates and twists the story, hinting at bodies and scandal. Harry tells Ron and Hermione about his scar and the letter he sent to Sirius. He worries as days pass with no reply. Mrs. Weasley has bought dress robes for the boys, and Ron's are old-fashioned and frilly. Ron complains bitterly about always getting second-hand things, and Harry feels guilty about his own hidden fortune. On the morning they leave for school, news arrives of trouble at Mad-Eye Moody's house. Mr. Weasley rushes off to help, and the others head to the train. On the Hogwarts Express, Draco Malfoy proudly mentions Durmstrang, another wizarding school. Hermione explains that Durmstrang and Beauxbatons are two other great European schools, and that Durmstrang has a dark reputation. They arrive at Hogwarts in pouring rain, ride the carriages, and gather in the Great Hall. House elves, Hermione learns, cook and clean for the school, and she is outraged at the idea of unpaid magical servants. A scarred, one-eyed man limps into the hall, Mad-Eye Moody, the famous ex-Auror. Dumbledore introduces him as the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Dumbledore then announces that Hogwarts will host the Triwizard Tournament. 2 visiting schools, Beauxbatons and Durmstrang, will send champions, and 1 Hogwarts student will join them in a dangerous, prestigious competition. Only students 17 and older may enter, and an impartial magical object, the Goblet of Fire, will select the champions. Fred and George immediately begin plotting how to fool the age line. Dumbledore will draw around it. Classes begin. Hagrid introduces blast-ended Scroots, dangerous and baffling creatures the 4th years must care for. Trelawney continues making dramatic predictions in divination, and Harry, remembering her real prophecy last year, feels uneasy. Rita Skeeter writes a nasty piece about Mr. Weasley's handling of the Moody incident, and Malfoy reads it aloud to taunt Ron. When Malfoy insults the Weasleys, Harry snaps back, and Malfoy tries to curse him from behind. Moody turns Malfoy into a bouncing ferret until McGonagall makes him stop, and the students realize this new teacher is nothing like the rest. In Moody's class, they learn about the unforgivable curses. On spiders, Moody demonstrates the Imperious Curse, the Cruciatus Curse, and Avada Kedavra, the killing curse that murdered Harry's parents. Harry is shaken to see death delivered again in a flash of green light. Neville is deeply disturbed, and Moody quietly takes him aside afterward, hinting at a painful past Harry does not yet know. Hermione launches SPEW, a society to fight for house elf rights. Harry and Ron are skeptical, but she is determined. Sirius finally writes back, saying Harry's scar hurting is part of a pattern of disturbing signs. He tells Harry he is coming closer, despite the risk, and warns him to be careful. Moody later uses the Imperious Curse on the class, with Dumbledore's permission, to teach them to resist it. Every student is controlled except Harry, who manages to fight back and break the curse's hold. Soon, the visiting schools arrive. Beauxbatons comes in a flying carriage led by enormous Madame Maxime, and Durmstrang sails up from the depths of the lake in a ghostly ship. To Ron's delight, Victor Crumb steps out as a Durmstrang student. The Beauxbatons students sit with Ravenclaw, and Durmstrang joins the Slytherin table. Dumbledore unveils the Goblet of Fire and draws an age line to keep younger students out. 17-year-olds from each school drop their names in, and Fred and George try to trick the line, only to be thrown back and aged into old men for a few minutes. On Halloween, the Goblet chooses the champions. Victor Krum for Durmstrang, Fleur Delacour for Beauxbatons, and Cedric Diggory for Hogwarts. Then, to everyone's shock, the Goblet spits out a fourth name, Harry Potter. The great hall falls silent as Harry walks forward, stunned and confused. No one is cheering, and he feels hundreds of accusing eyes on him. In a side chamber, the other champions and their head teachers demand to know how he entered. Harry insists he did not put his name in, and Dumbledore and the ministry officials argue over what to do. Moody suggests that someone powerful entered Harry under a fourth school to force him into a deadly competition. The contract is binding, and Harry must compete. Back in Gryffindor Tower, students celebrate, but Ron is cold and bitter. He thinks Harry lied to him about entering, and their friendship fractures. Hermione believes Harry and urges him to write to Sirius. The rest of the school turns against him, especially the Hufflepuffs, who resent Cedric being overshadowed. Rita Skeeter appears to interview him, then writes a wildly inaccurate article that paints Harry as tragic, unstable, and fame-hungry. The other champions' stories vanish behind hers. Harry's wand is weighed by Ollivander, reminding him that his wand shares a core with Voldemort's. Sirius arranges to meet Harry via the Gryffindor fireplace late at night. Before that meeting, Hagrid secretly invites Harry to join him at midnight. Under the invisibility cloak, Harry follows him and Madame Maxime to the edge of the forest and sees 4 dragons. Charlie Weasley explains that each champion must face a dragon in the first task. Harry returns to the castle terrified but now knows what's coming. He meets Sirius in the flickering fire, who warns him that Karkaroff was once a Death Eater and that someone tried to keep Moody from reaching Hogwarts. Sirius believes the Triwizard Tournament has been tampered with and urges Harry to be cautious. Harry decides to warn Cedric about the dragons, since Krum and Fleur likely already know. Moody overhears and approves, calling it a decent thing to do and hinting that Harry should use his broom. Harry realizes he can use a summoning charm to call his firebolt during the task. He practices relentlessly, summoning objects across the room until he can do it under pressure. On the day of the first task, the champions draw lots for their dragons. Harry gets the Hungarian Horntail, the most vicious of them all. When it is his turn, he summons his firebolt and soars into the sky. Up on the broom, the dragon becomes another dangerous opponent, like a Quidditch team he has to evade. After a tense chase, Harry grabs the golden egg and wins huge cheers from the stands. Later, Ron apologizes, realizing no one would enter something this dangerous just for glory. The judges award scores, and Harry ends up tied with Krum. Bagman tells them the second task is in February, and the egg holds a clue to what's coming. Section 3, The Graveyard and the Return. The Gryffindors throw a loud celebration in their common room. When Harry opens his egg, it screeches horribly and he slams it shut, deciding to worry about it later. In the meantime, Rita Skeeter starts circling Hagrid and convinces him to give an interview. Hermione discovers the entrance to the kitchens, and Harry and Ron meet Dobby and a miserable Winky working there. Dobby is delighted to be paid and free. Winky, cast off by Crouch, drinks heavily and sobs about secrets she knows but cannot reveal. As Christmas nears, McGonagall announces the Yule Ball, and the champions must open the dancing with partners. Harry dreads asking anyone and wants to ask Cho, but she's already going with Cedric. Hagrid's interview with Rita turns into a cruel revelation of his half-giant heritage. The article paints him as dangerous and unfit to teach, and Hagrid retreats into shame, refusing to answer his door. Dumbledore visits Hagrid and firmly refuses his resignation. Harry, Ron, and Hermione reassure him that they like him exactly as he is. At the Yule Ball, Harry attends with Parvati, Ron with Padma, and Hermione shocks everyone by appearing with Victor Krum. Ron's jealousy boils over, and he fights with Hermione for fraternizing with the enemy. Harry and Ron drift away from their dates and eavesdrop in the gardens. They hear Snape and Karkaroff talking nervously about something becoming clearer, and Hagrid telling Madame Maxime he is half-giant before she recoils. Cedric pulls Harry aside and suggests he take a bath with his egg and listen to it underwater. Harry resents Cedric for dating Cho and ignores the advice for weeks. Rita's article about Hagrid sparks hate mail for Hermione when Skeeter falsely paints her as toying with Harry and Krum. Hermione becomes determined to find out how Rita gets her information in such detail. Eventually, Harry forces himself to try Cedric's suggestion. In the prefect's bathroom, with Moaning Myrtle's help, He opens the egg underwater and hears a song from merpeople. They warn they will take something he will sorely miss to the depths of the lake. He will have 1 hour to retrieve it, or it will be lost. Harry knows he must learn to breathe underwater. He searches frantically for a solution, but finds nothing useful by the day before the task. The night before, McGonagall calls Ron and Hermione away, leaving Harry alone and exhausted. He falls asleep, only to be jolted awake by Dobby, who brings him gillyweed, a plant that lets a person grow gills and swim like a fish. Dobby reveals the hostages are already taken, and Ron is one of them. Harry rushes to the lake, eats the slimy gillyweed, and dives into the freezing water. He grows gills and webbed hands and feet and swims through the dark lake to an underwater village of merpeople. There he finds Ron, Hermione, Cho, and Fleur's little sister tied to poles. Krum appears, part shark from a partial transfiguration, and rescues Hermione. Cedric uses a bubblehead charm to free Cho. Fleur never arrives, attacked by Grindylows, so Harry refuses to leave her sister behind. He frees both Ron and the girl and struggles to bring them to the surface before his time runs out. The judges are impressed by Harry's refusal to leave anyone and award extra points for his moral fiber. He ends up tied with Cedric for first place. Between tasks, Rita publishes more stories, this time targeting Hermione as a manipulative heartbreaker. Hermione shrugs it off, but continues to suspect Rita of using some magical method to eavesdrop. Snape warns Harry to stay out of his private stores and hints at Veritas Serum, a potion that forces truth. Karkaroff later shows Snape something on his arm, terrified that it is getting clearer, but Snape brushes him off. Sirius meets Harry, Ron, and Hermione near Hogsmeade and fills in Barty Crouch's grim history. Crouch once led the crackdown on Death Eaters, sent people to Azkaban without trial, and even condemned his own son, who later died in prison. Back at Hogwarts, they visit the kitchens again and find Winky worse than ever. She hints that Crouch trusted her with important secrets, but her loyalty and despair lock her words. One day, the champions are led to the Quidditch pitch. It has been transformed into a giant maze that will be the third task, full of dark creatures and spells. Soon after, Harry and Krum talk privately at the edge of the forest about Hermione. Their conversation is interrupted by Barty Crouch stumbling out of the trees, wild-eyed and raving about Voldemort and Bertha Jorkins. Dumbledore sends Harry to fetch help. When Harry returns with him, Krum is stunned on the ground and Crouch has vanished. The grounds are searched, but Crouch is not found. Harry promises Sirius he will stay in the castle and focus on spells for the maze. During divination, Harry falls asleep and dreams he is in Voldemort's presence again. He sees Voldemort torturing Wormtail and speaking of plans and deaths, and his scar burns fiercely when he wakes. Dumbledore listens gravely when Harry tells him. While Dumbledore, Fudge, and Moody argue about Crouch's disappearance and half-giants, Harry waits in the office and discovers a pensieve full of Dumbledore's memories. He falls into a memory of Karkaroff's trial, where Karkaroff names Death Eaters to save himself. He names Snape, but a younger Dumbledore vouches that Snape turned spy against Voldemort before the fall. Another memory shows Crouch sentencing his own son and 3 others to Azkaban for torturing the Longbottoms. The boy begs, but Crouch declares he has no son. Dumbledore pulls Harry out of the pensieve and explains that Harry's scar links him to Voldemort's emotions. He confirms that Neville's parents were tortured into madness and insists he trusts Snape despite his past. The day of the third task arrives. The champions' families are invited, and Mrs. Weasley and Bill come to support Harry. That night, the champions enter the maze. Harry faces Scroots, a boggart disguised as a Dementor, and a Sphinx who tests him with a riddle. He hears Fleur scream and never sees her again in the maze. He later finds Krum torturing Cedric with the Cruciatus curse, stuns Krum, and helps Cedric up. Believing someone has bewitched Krum, Cedric and Harry part ways and race separately toward the cup. A giant spider attacks them near the center, and together they defeat it. They argue briefly over who should take the cup. Then they decide to share the victory and grab it at the same time. The cup is a portkey. It drags them both to a graveyard. Almost at once, a figure appears, Wormtail, carrying a small, twisted creature that is Voldemort's current form. On Voldemort's command, Wormtail kills Cedric with Avada Kedavra, the Spare. Harry is bound to a tombstone marked Tom Riddle. In a gruesome ritual, Wormtail adds bone from Voldemort's father's grave, his own severed hand, and Harry's blood to a cauldron. From the potion, Voldemort rises, tall and whole again, with pale skin and red eyes. Harry realizes with cold horror that the Dark Lord has truly returned. Voldemort summons the Death Eaters with the Dark Mark. They apparate into the graveyard, masked and fearful, and he taunts them for abandoning him. He reveals that his most faithful servant has been at Hogwarts all year, guiding events. He recounts how he survived in a weak, bodiless state and used Bertha Jorkin's stolen information to twist the Triwizard Tournament into a trap. Then Voldemort frees Harry and forces him to duel. He tortures him with Cruciatus and tries to control him with Imperius, but Harry refuses to bow. When Harry casts Expelliarmus and Voldemort casts Avada Kedavra, their wands connect. A golden thread links them, and echoes of Voldemort's last victims spill out. Cedric, Frank Bryce, Bertha Jorkins, and at last Harry's parents. They surround and encourage Harry. His father tells him to break the connection and run for the port key as soon as they distract Voldemort. Cedric begs Harry to take his body back to his parents. Harry agrees, breaks the spell, sprints to Cedric, and summons the cup. The port key yanks them both back to Hogwarts. Cedric's body lies cold beside Harry as the crowd realizes something has gone horribly wrong. Dumbledore rushes to Harry while cries of shock and grief echo across the stands. Moody pulls Harry away to his office, demanding to know what happened in the graveyard. Harry, shaking, tells the whole story. Moody then reveals that he was the one who put Harry's name in the goblet and steered him from the shadows. He confesses to casting the dark mark at the World Cup, cursing Krum, and manipulating the tasks. Just as he is about to attack Harry, Dumbledore, McGonagall, and Snape break in and stun him. They discover this is not the real Mad-Eye Moody, but Barty Crouch Jr., disguised all year with Polyjuice Potion. The real Moody is found imprisoned in a trunk. Under Veritaserum, Crouch Jr. tells how his mother saved him from Azkaban, how he lived in secret under the Imperius, and how he escaped to serve Voldemort again. He explains that he stole Harry's wand at the World Cup and murdered his own father on the Hogwarts grounds. Fudge arrives and brings a Dementor to question Crouch Jr. The Dementor instead delivers the kiss, sucking out his soul. In the hospital wing, Harry tells Sirius and Dumbledore everything about Voldemort's return. Dumbledore believes him completely and sees the danger ahead. Fudge, however, refuses to accept it. He accuses Harry and Dumbledore of trying to cause panic and storms out, leaving behind the Triwizard winnings. Dumbledore begins quietly rallying allies and tells Harry they must tell everyone who will listen. Harry, numb with shock and grief, struggles with his guilt over Cedric. At the leaving feast, Dumbledore tells the entire school that Cedric Diggory was murdered by Lord Voldemort. He honors Cedric's memory and urges the students to hold fast to their friendships, especially across school lines. On the train home, Hermione reveals that Rita Skeeter is an unregistered animagus who turns into a beetle to spy on people. Fred and George admit Bagman cheated them of their World Cup winnings with leprechaun gold. Harry gives them his entire Triwizard prize to start their joke shop. He says he doesn't want it and wants them to use it to get going. Back at King's Cross, the Dursleys appear to collect him. Harry leaves Hogwarts knowing that Voldemort has returned. The Ministry is in denial, and a harder, darker fight lies ahead, but also that he has friends, allies, and a godfather who will stand with him. Thanks for listening to Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment which book or tale you would like to recap next. See you in the next one.